Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Fine Art Diner. This is the second of the three-part series on why Lord Voldemort was not conceived by a love potion. In this episode, we will explore the possibility of Merope Gaunt using the Imperius Curse on Tom Riddle, as well as the reasons why Dumbledore believed Merope created a love potion, and why the Harry Potter community has never suspected that Merope did not create a love potion. The Imperius Curse is, after all, the first suggestion which Harry proposes when Dumbledore prompts him about how Merope Gaunt could have made Tom Riddle abandon his Muggle companion, Cecilia, and fall in love with Merope instead. Seduction is possible with the Imperius Curse because of the story Yusuf Kama tells in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, The Crimes of Grindelwald.
My father was Mustafa Kama, pure blood of Senegalese descent and most accomplished. My mother, Lorena, was equally high-bred and noted beauty. They were deeply in love. They knew a man of great influence from a famous French pure blood family. He desired her.
Maman?
Lestrange used the Imperius Curse to seduce and abduct her. I tried to prevent it, but he attacked me. It was the last time I ever saw her. She died giving birth to a little girl. You.
If Tom Riddle had been under the Imperius Curse, then his eventual leaving of Merope could be explained by his ability to fight the curse, although such resistance is considered rare. There are, however, at least two problems with substituting the Imperius Curse for the love potion. First, if Merope did employ the Imperius Curse, that would not explain the long-held belief that Voldemort was not capable of loving anyone. The side effect of being incapable of love is particular to a love potion and not the Imperius Curse, as we know from the case of Leta Lestrange in The Crimes of Grindelwald, since she loved Newt Scamander and was born of the union between Corvus Lestrange and Lorena Kama in her Imperius Curse-induced delirium. Or was Leta in love with Theseus? No, Newt, I think. Second, the Imperius Curse requires strength to implement and maintain, one which Harry Potter himself faced when using the Imperius Curse during his break-in of Gringotts Bank in the Deathly Hallows.
"We're in trouble. They suspect," said Harry as the door slammed behind them and he pulled off the invisibility cloak. Griphook jumped down from his shoulders. Neither Travers nor Bogrod showed the slightest surprise at the sudden appearance of Harry Potter in their midst. "They're Imperiust," he added, in response to Hermione and Ron's confused queries about Travers and Bogrod, who were both now standing there looking blank. "I don't think I did it strongly enough. I don't know." And another memory darted through his mind of the real Bellatrix Lestrange, shrieking at him when he had first tried to use an unforgivable curse. "You need to mean them, Potter!"
The Imperius Curse doesn't require the cruelty of a Death Eater to implement, not the way the Cruciatus Curse does, but it does require the cruelty to enslave or the desperation to enslave, as with the case of Harry breaking into the bank to get one of Voldemort's Horcruxes, Severus Snape using the Imperius Curse on McDungus Fletcher to ensure Harry's safety as he was transported from No. 4 Privet Drive to the Burrow, or with Professor McGonagall in the Ravenclaw Common Room using the Imperius Curse on Amicus Carrow to prevent him from calling Voldemort to capture Harry in the Deathly Hallows. Would Merope herself have sufficient strength to cast an Imperius Curse and then be strong enough to keep Tom Riddle under the spell? Merope has been characterized as battered and psychologically terrorized, whereas the privileged, happy, and mentally well-balanced Tom Riddle appears to be the picture of good health and strength. Yet here's an even better question, one which readers have asked of Merope Gaunt's character for years. If she was desperate enough after her father and brother were arrested to give Tom Riddle a love potion or place him under the Imperius Curse, wasn't she even more desperate after she became pregnant to keep Tom from leaving her while she was especially vulnerable and without any means in the world? Readers were correct to highlight such a contradiction in her character. However, I would like to suggest this isn't a problem with J.K. Rowling's writing, rather with Dumbledore's theory of how and why Merope and Tom fell in love. This leads us to the third and real problem with the love potion or Imperius Curse theory regarding Merope Gaunt and Tom Riddle. While there are many different types and qualities of love, the difference between Merope Gaunt and Corvus Lestrange is that Corvus didn't love Lorena Kama, he merely used her to beget offspring, and Merope, we know, did in fact love Tom Riddle. Harry Potter is, once again, our perfect example for echoing Merope Gaunt. It's because Harry Potter was so mistreated by the Dursleys that Harry sympathized with Dobby the house elf and was determined to help Dobby get his freedom from the abuse of the Malfoys. It's because Harry had suffered abuse that Harry knows what it's like to be enslaved. Therefore, making Harry's aid to free Dobby consistent with his character and heroic of him. I think we can say the same for Merope Gaunt and why she would not have wanted to enslave the man she loved, even to have him as her own, either with a love potion as we demonstrated in the first video or with the Imperius Curse. If it didn't matter to Merope to enslave Tom Riddle in the beginning of the relationship, it would have mattered to her after she became pregnant. She would have even more reason to ensure he didn't leave her and their unborn son. Dumbledore's theory that Merope hoped Tom had fallen in love with her is again feeble conjecture. If she were using a love potion or the Imperius Curse, the power she exercised would have made up for the lack of genuine feeling Tom Riddle was not reciprocating, because Merope would have been too selfish to care about Tom's lack of real feelings. This inconsistency in her character isn't an inconsistency in her character. It's a terrible flaw in Dumbledore's theory, one we were always meant to expose. In other words, Merope loved Tom and Tom loved Merope, and his eventual leaving of her will be explained later, but is just as natural as the real love they felt for each other without the aid of magical enchantments. That Merope was full of love and not vindictive or selfish is exemplified by what she did on her deathbed. Merope named her son, the only thing she had left in the world, after her father Marvolo, who had abused her all of her life, and Tom, even though Tom Riddle abandoned her when she needed him the most, showing that Merope wasn't a bully, she wasn't vengeful or bitter, in spite of the abuse she suffered and in spite of losing everything. We see this incredible capacity for love reflected in Harry Potter during the Battle of Hogwarts, just as Harry is about to finally destroy Voldemort once and for all. Voldemort, the man who killed Harry's parents, sentenced him to life with the Dursleys, and was the occasion for so many other tragic events in Harry's life. And yet, just as Harry is about to take revenge on Voldemort for all he's done to Harry and Harry's loved ones, Harry does not take revenge. Rather, Harry urges Voldemort to repentance for the murders he has committed and the crimes he has done.
But before you try to kill me, I advise you to think about what you've done. Think, and try for some remorse, Riddle. What is this? Of all the things that Harry had said to him, beyond any revelation or taunt, nothing had shocked Voldemort like this. Harry saw his pupils contract to thin slits, saw the skin around his eyes whiten. "It's your one last chance," said Harry. "It's all you've got left. I've seen what you'll be otherwise. Be a man. Try for some remorse." "You dare," said Voldemort again. "Yes, I dare," said Harry.
We might concoct another plan for Merope. What if she used the Imperius Curse on Muggles in the village to give her money so she could trade Muggle money at Gringotts for galleons, then use the galleons to buy ingredients to make the love potion? This would have obvious consequences. Muggles complaining their money was mysteriously gone to the local authority would rouse the curiosity of the wizarding authorities, who would have gotten wind of it, and Merope herself could have been thrown into Azkaban for using one of the unforgivable curses. The wizarding law enforcement working with Muggle authorities is evidenced in the opening of the Goblet of Fire when we see the Muggle investigators unable to explain how Mr., Mrs., and Tom Riddle were murdered while eating dinner, even though Merope wasn't arrested by Bob Ogden with her father and brother. If the Gaunts were the only wizarding family in the area, Bob Ogden was likely keeping an eye on Merope given the trouble her father and brother had caused him. So even if Merope did successfully implement the Imperius Curse on Muggles, their complaints to the local authority would have been heard by the wizarding authorities, and Merope would have been found out probably before she could have married Tom Riddle. So even though we don't necessarily have the same shaky moral grounds for this plot of Merope magically enslaving Muggles to ensure Tom Riddle would marry her, outside forces and even wizarding bureaucracy would have caught up with Merope in this scenario. This is further evidenced by yet another important fact, the Obscurus theory. Since the release of The Crimes of Grindelwald, many had theorized that Dumbledore's sister Ariana was an Obscurial, one who suppresses their magic instead of learning to harness it and control their power. Merope Gaunt shares many similarities with Credence Barebone, and yet we know Merope did not in fact develop an Obscurus. If anyone were going to become an Obscurial, it would likely have been Merope. But she never developed traits which would have allowed an Obscurus to develop because, like Harry Potter himself, love was so strong and powerful within her heart, there was no room for one. The same love protecting her from becoming an Obscurial protected others from being victim to her selfish abuse of power. So that leaves us with this. Why did Dumbledore propose such a poorly thought out idea to explain Voldemort? Because Dumbledore needed to explain Voldemort to himself. Dumbledore benefits most from believing that Merope gave Tom a love potion because it would explain why Tom Riddle Jr. would become obsessed with power and the dark arts. Please remember, Dumbledore blamed himself for the first greatest dark wizard, Gellert Grindelwald, and his rise to power because Dumbledore knew what Grindelwald was capable of but didn't stop him.
And then, you know what happened. Reality returned in the form of my rough, unlettered, and infinitely more admirable brother. I did not want to hear the truths he shouted at me. I did not want to hear that I could not set forth to seek hallows with a fragile and unstable sister in tow. The argument became a fight. Grindelwald lost control. That which I had always sensed in him, though I pretended not to, now sprang into terrible being. And Ariana, after all my mother's care and caution, lay dead upon the floor.
Just as Dumbledore saw what kind of man Grindelwald truly was, but didn't stop him, so Dumbledore saw the potential of what young Tom Riddle Jr. could become, but didn't stop him. And so I also believe Dumbledore blamed himself for the rise of Lord Voldemort. It's not within the scope of this video to debate whether Dumbledore was right in feeling guilty, just whether or not he did feel guilty. And given Dumbledore's guilt over the rise of Gellert Grindelwald and his tearful confession to Harry Potter at King's Cross Station, Dumbledore could not help but feel guilt, feel he should have done more to stop Voldemort. Dumbledore was simply saturated with grief, regret, and guilt, and couldn't bear any more responsibility for Tom Riddle Jr. becoming the darkest wizard ever, so he awarded that responsibility to Merope Gaunt and his own flimsy theory about her manipulating Tom Riddle for love. Now we must address why we, the readers, have believed Dumbledore's theory for so long. Why haven't we seen how difficult it would have been for Merope to make a love potion? The answer, I believe, is the same as that for Dumbledore. Guilt. As long as we, the readers, could sit back in our chair and remove ourselves from Voldemort under the guise that he was conceived by a magical love potion, then we wouldn't have to see our own selves implicated in any of his actions. In other words, I can't be guilty of wanting power, I can't be guilty of being afraid of death and my natural end because I'm a Muggle who could not possibly have been conceived by a love potion like Voldemort. So Merope Gaunt also becomes our scapegoat. The truth is, just as Harry had to fight temptations to become like Voldemort and carries a piece of Voldemort inside him, so too do we, and we are called to fight the cravings for power and the temptations to put ourselves before others just as Harry did. And what of J.K. Rowling? Hasn't she said over the years that Voldemort was conceived by a love potion? It's diplomatic of Rowling to not criticize the way her fans have read her books. If the reading public hasn't been ready to accept the truth about Voldemort, it was her occupying the position of a good author, not to point out to readers their fault in reading her books, but to let us make the journey for ourselves and discover the truth on our own, rather like Dumbledore letting Harry figure things out on his own. Thank you so much for joining me for this second video. Part 3 explores some of the consequences to the greater narrative of Voldemort not being conceived by a love potion, including Voldemort's relationship with Nagini and why he turned her into a Horcrux, his affair with Bellatrix Lestrange, and his fear of Severus Snape taking revenge on him.